Dear colleagues, dear participants, it seems that we have most participants on board. So let's start with the event. Matthew, could you go one slide back? Take control. Okay. So before we start, my name is Mathieu van Rijn. I'm a forestry officer working at the regional office for FAO in the Asia Pacific. We will be recording this session. If you have any issues with this, please let us know. Microphone and camera are muted by default or off by default, except for the speakers. Sorry, it's running. If you have any questions or would like to comment or ask, please type it in the chat box, and it's accessible in the right bottom of your screen. You can also use the raise hand function when you would like to speak. In terms of agenda, we start with part 1, setting the stage, opening of the event, with interventions of the ASEAN Secretariat, Switzerland, and UNEP. And this will be followed by part 2, a panel discussion on the regional and country experiences and implementation. For that panel discussion, we will have participants from Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, speaking on country experiences, on social forestry, RECOFTC on regional perspectives, as well as indigenous people, local community representative from CSO Forum, who will share their perspectives. After this panel discussion, or also during, when there are some questions you would like to raise, we will have a question and answer session, and hope we can reflect some of your suggestions. One of the goals today is also to see if there are synergies with ongoing other initiatives, projects. So I hope that those will come up during the discussion. After that, ASEAN Secretariat will provide the closing. With that, we can start with part 1, setting the stage. The first speaker will be Dian Sukumaya. Dian Sukumaya is Senior Officer at the Food, Agriculture and Forestry Division, Sectoral Development Directorate of the ASEAN Secretariat. He joined the ASEAN Secretariat in 2008, tackling relevant issues in forestry, such as sustainable forest management, forest law enforcement, and governance, and forest certification. His expertise is on forest nature conservation, policy, sustainable forest management, and forest governance. Currently responsible for the ASEAN cooperation in forestry, agriculture research and development, climate change, and agriculture cooperatives. Dian, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Matthew. Can you hear my voice?
I can hear you well.
Okay, great. Distinguished colleague, Mr. Rolf A. Stam, Deputy Head of Political, Economic, and Cultural Division at the Embassy of Switzerland to Indonesia, Timor-Leste, and ASEAN. Mr. Mario, Head of the UN REDD Program Secretariat, the Forest and Climate Partnership of FAO, UNDP, and UNEP. Colleague from ASEAN member state, distinguished representative from partners, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon and good morning for those who is living in different part of geography. First and foremost, I would like to welcome and highly appreciate for your participation at this launching event of the UN REDD program on climate change mitigation through social forestry actions in ASEAN countries. As you may be aware that the region, the ASEAN region, is very vulnerable to the adverse impact of climate change due to its long coastline and also dependency of the people to the agriculture and forestry sectors. This initiative is quite timely to enhance dialogues on the role of social forestry in climate change, in particular to strengthen evidence base for climate mitigation contribution of social forestry that facilitate integration of related action in nationally determined contribution and that enhance climate finance opportunities. So we expect that through this initiative, we could also explore collaborations and tap some resources from different financing mechanisms to support climate change mitigation effort. Colleagues from ASEAN member state and also from international partners, you may wish to recall that more than a decade, the ASEAN cooperation in social forestry has been in place, and we have already closely engaged with Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation under the ASEAN-Swiss Partnership on Social Forestry and Climate Change. It is our honor for ASEAN and member states to have this long partnership with ASEAN, with quite number of regional policy and also knowledge products have been delivered during this partnership. Just to mention several milestones under this partnership, such as the development of ASEAN Guideline for Agroforestry Development, ASEAN Guideline for Sustainable Harvest and Resource Management Protocols for Selective NTFP, and also the development of several training manuals supported by this framework. The partnership was quite productive and successfully implemented in collaboration with international partners such as C4, ICRAF, NTFPEP, RECOFTC, and SHARECA. And I am happy to inform that those organizations are still actively involved in AWG annual meeting, although the ASEAN-Swiss partnership on social forestry and climate change has ended in 2020. Distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the new UN REDD program indeed marked a continuation of the new partnership with the government of Switzerland. I do hope that with this initial program, we can continue and strengthen our cooperation with Switzerland, in particular under mutual interest area of the forestry sectors and also the agriculture. Just last year's senior officials meeting and also the ASEAN Ministers on Agriculture and Forestry has emphasized on the need for ASEAN and member states to address issues related to sustainable agriculture, reducing the use of agrochemical, promoting nature-based solution, and decarbonization effort. On forestry sectors, the senior officials and the ministers reiterated their commitment to further enhance sustainable forest management, taking into account current development on climate change and also in addressing current pandemic situation. ASEAN cooperation in forestry still puts sustainable forest management, where the forest should provide economic benefit, ecological and environmental sustainability, while also ensuring social cultural aspect and community livelihood. Another areas including forest law enforcement and governance, including wildlife enforcement, forest product developments, forest climate change, and social forestry. On social forestry, with strong partnership with Switzerland, I would like to proudly inform that ASEAN has made significant progress in terms of extent areas managed by community under this social forestry or community forestry program, and how social forestry program can contribute to the green recovery strategy following the impact of COVID-19 pandemic. Indonesia, one of an important champion in social forestry, not only strength in terms of social forestry program, but also there are quite significant progress on institutional development. It shows how progressive social forestry development in the region is being developed since the last decade. Distinguished delegates, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, the UN REDD program consists of national and regional components that are complements each other. Although the pilot at this stage is focusing in 3 member states, which is Cambodia, Indonesia, and Lao PDR, I'm sure that the products output of the project will also beneficial for other ASEAN member states, since in principle, ASEAN member state has similar issues and concern on social forestry development. On the regional components related to improving regional capacities on nature-based solution or ecosystem-based approach to support social forestry development in ASEAN, that is focusing to deliver regional guiding principles and practical tools for NBS implementation, as well as sharing best experience and practices on nature-based solution. The ASEC humbly request for active participation and support for the implementation from ASEAN member state. I think good collaboration among ASEAN member state and also support from partners is critical for successful implementation of this UN-REDD program. With that, I would like to thank and conclude my remarks by hoping successful deliberation of launching event and looking forward for successful implementation. Again, congratulate to all ASEAN member states. Thank to Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation and also Swiss government and all partners for your support. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dian Sukumaya from the ASEAN Secretariat. The next speaker will be Ralph Stam. Ralph Stam is Deputy Head of Political, Economic and Cultural Division at the Embassy of Switzerland in Indonesia, Indonesia, Timor-Leste and the ASEAN. He is in charge of the embassy's work on ASEAN in the framework of Switzerland-ASEAN Sectoral Dialogue Partnership. He also manages the embassy's peace and human rights portfolio and the relations with Timor-Leste. Ralph Stam, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Matthew, dear Dian, participants, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. 15 years ago, Switzerland and ASEAN started collaborating on social forestry and climate action. And today we are opening a new chapter of this cooperation, and we are very happy about that, and we will look forward to the way ahead. In the next couple of minutes, I would like to highlight the positive impact that the ASEAN-Swiss partnership on social forestry and climate change had. I will then talk about the challenges that lie ahead of us and how we would like to address those challenges together with you through this new UN-REDD initiative. On the 26th of February 2020, just before the pandemic, the Swiss ambassador and the ASEAN Secretary General planted a tree in the garden of the ASEAN Secretariat. Some of you were there and certainly remember the colorful closing event of the ASEAN-Swiss partnership on social forestry and climate change. The partnership was a long-term flagship program. It aimed to boost social forestry and climate change in ASEAN member states. Its core objective was to improve food security and climate change adaptation capacities by developing and improving social forestry initiatives. Social forestry recognizes that people who depend on local forests are best placed to look after them, and that allowing communities to manage and use forest resources can have a positive social, environmental, and economic impact. The program has influenced social forestry policies at the local, national, and regional levels. It has contributed to a 100% increase in the total area of forests managed by communities across ASEAN. If Cambodia, Indonesia, Myanmar, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam reach the targets they have set, the total forest area managed by local communities will exceed 20 million hectares by 2030. An external evaluation of the ASEAN-Swiss partnership on social forestry and climate change showed that the program was successful in shaping the forestry agenda in member states. The evaluation and an independent survey with stakeholders from the region underlined the success of the program. In particular, the flexibility to respond to social forestry developments in ASEAN on the one hand, and integrating issues of climate change in local land use concept on the other hand, were highlighted. It was also acknowledged that the partnership had credible and diverse implementing partners with RECOFTC in a coordinating role. The ASEAN-Swiss partnership effectively helped to advance the social forestry agenda and to set climate change on the radar of regional, national, and local policymakers. Another key lesson was that the long 10-year timeframe helped to integrate social forestry concepts in wider forest and climate change policy of member states in a sustainable way. The partnership changed mindsets, it changed policies, and it helped countries to adapt to climate change and to mitigate greenhouse gases from the atmosphere through appropriate land use mechanisms. This was achieved thanks to the competent management of all engaged parties. First, the ASEAN Working Group on Social Forestry, whose secretariat is hosted by the Ministry of Environment and Forestry of Indonesia. Second, the ASEAN Secretariat. And third, the technical and operational implementation partners, namely RECOFTC, NTFP-EP, C4, ICRAF, and SEARCA. Over time, the working group developed into an important advisory body to the ASEAN senior officials on forestry. Now, looking to the future, there remain urgent priorities that a social forestry initiative in ASEAN should address. They include insecure land tenure, climate change, and food insecurity. Social forestry is widely recognized within ASEAN and as a viable and positive approach for achieving sustainable forest management. However, the connection between forest-dependent communities and climate change mitigation is often still loose or not evident. Now, we want to change that with the new ASEAN UN-REDD program we launch today. For Switzerland, the role of social forestry remains a key concern in the framework of climate change. That is why the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation remains closely engaged with RECOFTC as a long-time strategic partner of Switzerland in Asia. Strengthening forest governance, increasing the forest area managed by communities, and securing the tenure rights of local communities will help to expand the climate change or climate action portfolio of ASEAN member states. It will also add to national determined contributions to the Paris Agreement. The new ASEAN UN-REDD program, implemented jointly by FAO, UNDP, UNEP, and RECOFTC in collaboration with the ASEAN Working Group on Social Forestry, will continue the pathway we started 15 years ago. It will foster cooperation and the exchange of learning and experiences within ASEAN. Switzerland understands the need for urgent and effective action. We therefore expand our support for mitigating and adapting to climate change. Concretely, we recognize this new project as an opportunity to expand our engagement in linking social forestry to climate change mitigation. There are risks associated with market-based mitigation approaches, but there are also opportunities to strengthen the land rights of local and indigenous peoples through carbon markets and reduced emission from deforestation and forest degradation. We also see opportunities to foster and strengthen sustainable land management. All these aspects are central to the new project. The objective of the new project is to promote climate change mitigation through social forestry actions in ASEAN. it is a logical continuation of Switzerland's engagement on social forestry and climate action in the region. The UN REDD initiative is anchored in the sectoral dialogue partnership between Switzerland and ASEAN. Earlier this month, Switzerland and ASEAN agreed on new practical cooperation areas that will guide our partnership in the next 5 years. And one of those practical cooperation areas is exactly social forestry. I will conclude by saying that Switzerland is committed to continuing its cooperation with ASEAN in order to strengthen and scale up social forestry practices. We look forward to the results of this new project. And finally, we will be pleased to continue engaging with the ASEAN Working Group on Social Forestry and other relevant sectoral bodies. Thank you.
Thank you, Ralph Stam from the Swiss Embassy to Indonesia, Timor-Leste, and ASEAN. The next speaker will be Mario Boccucci. Mario is the head of the UN REDD Secretariat, the Forest and Climate Partnership of FAO, UNEP, and UNEP. He has more than 25 years of experience with the UN, the World Bank, and the European Commission at the headquarters and country level in Africa, Asia Pacific, and Latin America on both operational and policy work on terrestrial ecosystems, forest governance, biodiversity, and climate change. Mario Boccucci, the floor is yours.
And thank you, Matthew. A warm welcome and thank you to everyone from Geneva. And what a pleasure to be all together. It's a morning here in Geneva. It's sunny. And a pleasure to meet you again, Padian and Ralph. I think the landscape has been laid out very, very well by both Diane and Ralph. So what I would like to offer here is a reflection from the vantage point that I have as the head of the UN REDD program secretariat. The UN REDD program, operating in 65 countries to support countries and with a long history of working together in the ASEAN region. So that's what I would like to offer in the next few minutes. And all of these are, to speak and to complement what Ralph and Diane have said about the importance of this initiative, that it's continuing work that has been done in the past 10 years. So my first reflection is that, clearly we are moving, and when I say we, is the collective community that work on climate, on forest, on livelihoods, on food security. We are moving from an era of goodwill, of pilots, of readiness, as it is normally referred in the climate change domain. And we're moving into a decade of massively scaled up actions and massively scaled up finance. And I wanted to give you one data point to corroborate this statement, right? This statement that we're shifting, we're really making a step change. And that data point is on Glasgow, the COP26 that took place 6 months ago. And of course, you probably are aware of the fact that there was a Glasgow Declaration on Forest, which was very powerful, especially as it was signed up by heads of state. So it went beyond the ministry that we normally operate with. But also equally important, in Glasgow, there was a pledge on forest that reached more than 20 billion. There was a powerful signal that investment is ready to flow into the forest and climate space. And very important, 1.7 billion were pledged to support action at the local level with and for local communities. So that's a data point that really signifies that there is not only the recognition, but the explicit support for communities and to empower communities who are operating on the forest frontiers everywhere in Latin America, in Africa, in Asia. And on those forest frontiers, the local communities are the key agent of change to conserve forests, to restore forest, and to sustainably manage forest. So that's, very important data point, very recent. So then leads me to my second point, which is, this being the context, changing gear, having an unprecedented level of political and financial support in the space in which we have been operating for many years, what is the added value of this initiative? And both Ralph and Diane have spoken very well about that. So I just want to highlight one key feature. A key feature is that of connecting to accelerate. And there's three areas where I think this initiative is important in making those connections. The first one is to help connect the social forestry agenda with the climate change agenda, and to make that connection operational. Secondly, is that this initiative will connect actions at the local level, at the country level, and at the regional level. And in this way, it really provides a resonating chamber where local communities are supported by changes in national policies and regional. And the reverse is also true, that those national policies and regional policies are informed by what happens at the local level. And the third area where I think this initiative is important in terms of connecting is, both Diane and Ralph have been speaking about this initiative is a continuation. Absolutely. So we want to connect the past, everything that has been learned and done by so many champions that are here with us today, that are out there on the ground, everything that has been learned and done, to connect it to the future, a future where we're going to have a very different landscape in which we operate. And so my conclusion is that, the impact of this initiative, we believe it will really be to accelerate the transformation. They will put local actions to conserve, restore, and sustainably manage forests, empower those local action, and help them be delivered very quickly, rapidly. And my final comment is the impact will also be at the global level, because this initiative can be an exemplar of how progress can be done at scale and can be real. And therefore, I think what happens in the ASEAN region with this social forestry and with everything else that you are doing will also be very useful, very important to inform global processes. With this, back to you, Matthew. Thank you to everyone. It's really a pleasure to be working together.
Thank you, Mario Boccucci. It's indeed a pleasure to launch this event and to launch this initiative, and it's a starting point. And as was rightly said, it could lead to more. I mean, we are really at the crossroads, and I think we are we are addressing some key aspects with this initiative, and it's a start of a journey. It's not a final project, or I think this will lead to more engagement of social forestry, more recognition of social forestry in the climate change atmosphere. Okay, following this kind welcome remarks, we will share quickly the outline of this initiative. I will start the presentation. Also, my colleague George Scott from UNEP will contribute. So if we look at social forestry in national determined contributions of ASEAN member states, so this is the commitment towards the Paris Agreement. If we look at how social forestry is recognized, at the moment, 5 member states mention the importance of social forestry in mitigation efforts. 4 member states mention specific social forestry strategies to reduce emissions and increasing removals. And I think Ralph Stam mentioned it earlier, it's very important to seek the connection between mitigation, so reducing emissions, increasing removals, and social forestry. So at the moment, 4 member states have specific social forestry strategies. 2 member states of those 4 have specific mitigation targets. So I'm highlighting this, so there is room for increasing or improving. Maybe it's not always easy to capture social forestry aspects. There are different reasons why specific mitigation targets have not been specified, but there is work here in order to improve this. Next slide, please. So the expected outcome of this initiative is to strengthen the evidence base for climate mitigation contribution of the social forestry, facilitates the integration into national determined contributions, and enhances climate finance opportunities. So the evidence base for scaled up social forestry contributions to climate mitigation will be generated in a number of ASEAN countries, and building on ongoing programs and lessons from previous work, as well as what we promote, what we capture in this current initiative. Next slide, please. We will work with ASEAN, specifically with the ASEAN Working Group on Social Forestry, the Asian Working Group on Forest and Climate Change, because we are looking at both social forestry aspects and climate change aspects. And as Pak Tian mentioned, specifically looking at Cambodia, Lao PDR, and Indonesia. But the idea is that these lessons, the lessons that will be generated in Cambodia, Lao, PDR, and Indonesia, will contribute to wider discussions at the ASEAN level. And vice versa, interesting lessons, past experiences will also contribute to implementation in the country. And perhaps later on, we can also see other countries joining in efforts or having parallel efforts in the same scope. Next slide, please. In terms of outputs, we work on 5 outputs. Output 1 is looking at the contribution of social forestry schemes towards climate change mitigation in ASEAN, and we focus specifically on 3 pilot countries. Output 2 is the increasing capacities to assess and monitor social forestry. Output 3 is to integrate social forestry actions in NDCs. So at the moment, there is a request, in fact, by the end of the year to have improved NDCs. In the next, I believe in 2025. So how can we ensure, or how can we capture social forestry, have data, and ensure that they can be included in these national determined contribution? Output 4, promote and accelerate responsible private investment in social forestry. And output 5, enhance capacities of ASEAN member states to quantify benefits and connect partners and operationalize nature-based solution and ecosystem-based approaches. Next slide, please. In more detail, if we look at output 1, and we start with a comparative assessment of the mitigation contribution of different social forestry models, as well as in parallel assessment of the potential extent of social forestry interventions. So if we look at the 3 pilot countries, and we are still in discussion of following this regional event, specific country level work planning events, what is the potential in terms of social forestry interventions, what are the different social forestry interventions that are present in the countries, and what would be their potential mitigation contribution. So if we have maybe the existing extent of, for instance, community forestry or village forestry, what would be the potential? If we look further, what would be if we expand, what would be potential, and what could be reached in terms of mitigation contribution if you look at that. This will lead to recommendations on social forestry interventions that can contribute to climate change mitigation. And this we will discuss at the ASEAN level with the working group and working group of social forestry and a working group on forest and climate change. And that contributes to building relevant evidence base that could attract finance. And here we also will work, we define maybe 1 or 2 or 3 initiatives that we can say, okay, we have the evidence base for that, and we can look for additional climate finance. Next slide, please. I'll put 2 activities, look at monitoring. So there will be participatory discussions to decide on methods how to integrate social forestry monitoring in national forest monitoring systems. Most ASEAN member states have established the national forest monitoring systems for REDD+, for other national purposes, but we found that the connection of how we link social forestry to national reporting, sometimes it needs strengthening of the national forest monitoring system. And new technologies also allow this strengthening. So you have to look at smaller scales, like it's more fine-grained monitoring compared to large-scale forest conservation or protection. Output 2 looks at building the system and human capacities at the national level, at national governments, but also under output 2.3, looking at local capacities. So those 2 need to be linked, both the national reporting systems and the national forest monitoring system and local capacities. Next slide, please. With all these lessons, we can work towards identifying specific social forestry interventions as mitigation and adaptation actions towards NDCs. We also look at enabling activities such as promoting tenure security and user rights, without which it is difficult to create this kind of investments into the social forestry models, interventions to lead to mitigation, and also look at incentive mechanisms and benefit sharing mechanisms. So how, if social forestry actions or interventions are contributing to mitigation actions at the national level, how are these social forestry mitigation actions recognized, and how can we have incentive mechanisms to promote or further promote social forestry mitigation actions. Next slide, please, and I would like to request George to talk about output 4.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is George Scott, and I am the UNEP Technical Advisor on Private Sector Engagement in Asia Pacific for UN REDD. We have heard that social forestry serves a multitude of interests, supporting positive environmental outcomes while also converging with objectives in entrepreneurship, livelihood development, and market-based solutions. Importantly, also, social forestry provides an opportunity to build longevity into carbon sequestration. Finding alternative revenue streams from forest use makes forests more secure, so their value is not just based on the carbon they will sequester. Carbon markets are largely created by regulation and subject to volatility. And as such, over time, they can be insecure. Building viable businesses, which are built around forests, but also attached to markets beyond carbon, can play a vital role in stabilizing carbon sequestration from forests. However, despite the ambitious targets for expanding social forestry uptake has progressed slightly slower than planned. Even when communities have the right to manage, protect, and use forests, they face other challenges which have prevented them from gaining the full potential benefit of social forestry. Without experience, communities may lack the knowledge and skills to set up and manage enterprises, but there are also structural barriers such as insecure land access, insufficient access to financial resources, and weak value chains and limited market access. These have largely inhibited the development of social forestry and their access to commercial value chains. Indeed, social forestry models face a multitude of challenges simply due to their inherent characteristics. Non-timber forest product value chains tend to be highly fragmented and decentralized, making it difficult for producers to access intermediaries to gain market access. Additionally, poor infrastructural links with markets compound this challenge of accessing markets and increase operational and transportation costs. Finally, social forest enterprises often have limited marketing reach, which means they struggle to gain the attention of relevant off-takers, intermediaries, or retailers. In addition to market access challenges, social forestry enterprises face challenges accessing finance that they need to finance the investment to develop and grow their enterprises. This comes from their inherent informality and limited track record, which makes them appear potentially riskier to lenders. They also have heightened risk parameters that are generated around lending to agricultural and timber sectors. This is compounded by the risk of a lack of collateral due to unstable or non-existent tenure. These all lead to very few successful commercial financing models for social forestry. And to date, most of the limited funding that we have seen has come from NGOs and philanthropic grants. So the activities that are being taken as part of Output 4 have been developed to try to tackle these challenges and to promote and accelerate responsible investment in social forestry. In these activities, there are three main elements which are spread over 5 activities. Firstly, the commercial element, secondly, a financial element, and finally, a knowledge management element. Finance to support investment in enterprise development will really only occur if the conditions are right, and there is the potential for generating a revenue to repay a loan or service debt. For social forestry enterprises, this assurance really begins with a commercial offtake agreement. With this in mind, the first element of Output 4 deals with understanding the commercial potential of social forestry programs in India, Indonesia, Laos, PDR, and Vietnam, and providing support to enterprises in value chains that have high commercial potential to access markets, engage market access, and developing their business plan. This will be supported by the deployment of an acceleration platform that UNEP has been developing for sustainable land use enterprise development. The aim of the platform is to work with a cohort of social forestry enterprises, training them, building capacity in business planning, governance, and understanding contractual agreements to help them to negotiate a fair price in offtake agreements. The second element is to then support engagement with financial actors to help them attract the finance needed to successfully implement their business plan. For here, we'll be matching the scale of the investment need with the right financial actor. The ultimate aim will be to identify and engage with financial actors that are willing to finance investments in the high potential social forestry value chains that we identified in the previous section. Each engagement will be captured, detailing the individual barriers to finance, and also detailing any successful transaction that we are able to support in and writing it up in financial blueprints. The final element is therefore knowledge management, and the aim is to disseminate and showcase these lessons learned in the form of financial blueprints, which will be disseminated through regional roundtable consultations, webinar and online fora with the ASEAN working groups on social forestry and forest and climate change, as well as regional investor communities and networks, so that the work that we have done in this short time can contribute to moving the social forestry sector forward. So I will stop here and pass back to Mathieu, or open the floor to any questions.
Thank you, George. Next slide, please. So the final output of the initiative is working directly with ASEAN. So the enhanced capacities of ASEAN member states to quantify benefits, connect partners, and operationalize nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based approaches in the context of social forestry. Pak Dian, in his opening remarks, already mentioned the key interest in nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based approaches. So this output will specifically work on this. So development of nature-based solutions, ecosystem-based approaches, action pathways, and quantified benefits, and strengthen knowledge capacity partnerships on nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based approaches. What we will be working on is on guidelines, as well as a toolbox towards nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based approaches. With that, we can go to the next slides, unless there are any questions or need for clarifications. So, Mathieu, one slide back, please. So the next steps after this regional launch is country consultation meetings in Cambodia, Indonesia, and Lao PDR to discuss detailed work plans following this regional kickoff event. Also, the planning around outcome 5, finalizing this regarding nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based approaches. I would like to mention here, this is the start of a journey. We are starting today, this is the launch. We're starting a process which at the moment we have a final date by the end of 2024. But of course, given the urgency, given the global perspective, I think we are working towards recognizing social forestry and the role social forestry can bring towards climate change mitigation, as well as climate change adaptation. Thank you. Next slide, please. So if there are no questions, and if you have questions, please provide or type them in the chat or request the floor. If not, we go to part 2 of this launch event, which is the panel discussion on regional and country experiences and implementation. We will have 5 panel members. Mr. Long Ratnakoma from Cambodia, Deputy Director, Department of Forest and Community Forestry, the Forestry Administration. We have Mr. Tabagus Aye Ramasha from Indonesia, Mr. Ponapan from Lao PDR, Mr. Ronakom Trigagon from RECOFTC, and Mr. Dazzle Lapabis from the NGO, the Civil Society Forum on Social Forestry in the ASEAN, CSO Forum. We have some presentations. I'm not sure, Mr. Long Ratnakoma, if you had a presentation or you had a verbal contribution. We go through a few questions or areas we would like to discuss some perspectives. Next slide, please. So these are guiding questions, although they're not phrased as questions, but these are areas we could discuss. So what is the current state of social forestry in the country or in the region? What are challenges with implementing or expanding social forestry activities? What do you see as the key opportunities? And how are social forestry aspects reflected in the national determined contribution or in climate change strategies? And do you see synergies between this UNREDD initiative and other initiatives, ongoing initiatives or initiatives that are in the making? We will also look specifically at the indigenous people and local community perspectives. So for this last question, Mr. Dessel Lapabis from the CSO Forum might provide some intervention. Ratnakoma, can I ask you for some insights on the following area?
Okay, good afternoon. Sorry. Good afternoon. Yes, distinguished guests, ASEAN secretariat, and our speaker. Do you hear me well?
We can hear you well, yes.
It's okay. I'm sorry, it's my PC has problem with the video, so I cannot show my beautiful face. Sorry. Yeah, just only the photo here. Yeah. So first of all, I would like to thank you very much for the organizing committee that gave me the chance to join this meeting, related the UN REDD as well. So yeah, take the opportunity. I would like to say briefly about the, how the CF, how the Committee Forestry Development Cambodia, contribute to the climate change adaptation and mitigation as well. Yeah, as you read at the moment about the 5 questions. So I try my best to respond all this 5 questions as well. Yeah. So as you know, for the community forestry development in Cambodia, yeah, is we have developed in 1993, 94. Yeah, it's now nearly 30 years already. So along with this way, we have a lot of policy and regulation to support our community forestry development in Cambodia. In fact, in the ASEAN context, we call social forestry, but in Cambodian context, we call the community forestry. So the government to recognize, the people who live near or in the forest, government to recognize the right to manage, to use the forest in the sustainable way. So the government provide of the production forest to the local community, to manage something like this. So it's mean that, they have the right to use, and not just only traditional use, but also in the economic purpose as well. So until now, we have 643 community forestry, establishment in Cambodia. Around approximately more than 500,000 hectares of the forest. Yes, more than 500,000 hectares is, community forestry in Cambodia as well. Yeah. And, related, what is the challenges, in the community forestry development, in Cambodia? At present, there are like institutional, like managerial and financial challenges that restrain the potential role of the local community could play in the sustainable forest landscape management, restoration, climate protection, and biodiversity conservation. As we know, like in Cambodia, for the forest, natural forest management, we have 2 government institution, you know. First, like some part of the production forest is under the Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fishery. And some part of the forest, like protected area, national park, or wildlife sanctuary, is under the Ministry of Environment Management, something. So that here there's some, you know, sometimes it's like still, you know, how to say, like has some internal conflict. You know, some area is not clear. It's mean like overlap between, you know, Ministry of Environment and Ministry of Agriculture, Forest, Fisheries, you know, jurisdiction, something. Some county forestry area is located, you know, in the how to say, like wildlife corridor, something like this. But you know, like this wildlife corridor is managed by Ministry of Environment, but also still Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, which is still responsible the committee for something like this. Yeah, that's here is our, you know, what is challenging also. And another one for the community forestry development also, you know, we need more, require more, you know, knowledge, capacity building to the local community on that, you know. Even example related the how to community forest registration. Sometimes, you know, it's not just clear about the procedure on that, because not the community forest in Cambodia, not just only recognized by Ministry of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fishery, but we need to register, you know, with the Ministry of Land Management as well. So that here until now, just only around 20 county forestry site that register already with the Ministry of Land Management as well. And another requirement or needs, you know, from the local community, from the community forestry, also related to the technical, you know, support. It's very important. You know, sometimes they just only manage, just only protect the forest, but sometimes they don't know how to manage in sustainable way, how to say collect or how to processing the timber or non-timber forest product like this. Even the forestry law allow them to manage in economic purpose, like it's mean they had right to harvest the timber, but sometimes it's technical, you know, we need to build more and more technical to them how to harvest the timber, how to manage in sustainable way like this. And also related the, you know, something like how to build their, like how to say timber non-timber enterprise, something like this, that they can, you know, compete with the how to say market, something like this. Yeah. Another point related the key opportunity for the community forestry development in Cambodia. Yeah, as I mentioned at the moment, the community forestry is have the role in the production forest. It means where that have the potential in the harvest, the timber and non-timber forest product for the income generation, for the livelihood improvement. This is very important. Another opportunity is now we to enhance the private sector, you know, as a partnership. We engage the private sector to how to say, like joint management or development in the community forest. Yeah, something like this. And another one, you know, as we recognize the potential role of community forest management can plan in terms of climate change mitigation and adaptation. Yes, I mean they can, you know, can collect timber forest product or non-timber forest product for their livelihood. And also as well, you know, they can implement the agroforestry in community forestry, that they can, you know, both they can how to say, like forest restoration, and also they can get the income, you know, income generation from the agroforestry implementation as well. And they also they plant the tree, not just only how to say, like they can plant the tree for the economic purpose, not just only for the protected or for the conservation, but also they can plant for the economic. Like some part they can plant the tree like fast tree like acacia or eucalyptus, something like this. Yeah, it's good for them that the county forestry, they have, you know, county forest area, you know, that they can apply all this, you know. Another one, how the social forestry aspect are reflected in the NDC, climate change strategy. As we know, community forestry is it's good, that we can improve the forest management. We can improve the forest monitoring, in Cambodia. I see in Cambodia now, it's, more all the community forests have the good management. Yeah, something like this. Even we have still, how to say, has some land encroachment or illegal logging, but the community forestry still is the better than other how to say concepts, something. And even agroforestry implementation, the government just only how to say provide the money to piloting the agroforestry in community forests in last 3 years. So now based on our result of this piloting, so we can see, the agroforestry is good, for the, how to say, contribute to the climate change mitigation and adaptation. It means both, we can, how to say, make more native tree or like forest regeneration, and also we can, get the income generation through plant any crop or something, in this forest as well. And we see like community forestry in Cambodia is good strength and the implementation of the sustainable forest management on that. Yeah, even we have more than 600, but still now more and more build their capacity as well. Yeah, and soon now the government this year try to, how to say, amendment the forestry law, but in fact it's not real amendment, because we revise more than 50%. So we call like revision the new forestry law. Maybe the government will endorse soon, maybe this year or early next year. So we will how to say delegate all this like a community or some activity related to the forest sector to the subnational, it means to the provincial, to the district or community. So it's mean like closely to the government subnational who like work closely or nearly to the community forestry, something like this. Yeah. Yes, so I think my presentation is like this, but related the signature between this UNRED initiative and other initiative. For this point, I'm not so clear on that. Yeah, about this UNRED, I'm sorry because I'm not familiar with this one. Maybe we have some like Mekong Regional Land Government Project, something like this, but I'm not clear. Maybe Matthew is clearer than me. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Long-Hat Nakoma. It's very good to hear these views and perspectives from Cambodia. I think we received a few questions in the chats. I don't know, George, if you want to address or ask the question on the private people partnerships, or follow up specifically with Koma. Thanks.
I'll first respond to the question from Hassan, which asks about the non-timber forest project elements in relation to, would this include biodiversity conservation projects? So the aim of Output 4 really is to empower the local communities in their capacity to develop commercial enterprises. One of the things that we want, the reason why we want to empower local communities is because we trust in their ability to sustainably manage the forest. We'll look for a range of different incentives. So the economic incentives that come from the commercial revenue that we hope that they will be able to develop from the harvesting and management of the forest is one, but we'll also look at adding carbon revenues and potential other revenue streams. But with regard to specific safeguards, they're not being incorporated through the activity in Output 4, but they are incorporated through UNREDD's work as a whole. The question on, let me see. So the question from Danny, if tree planting is good for business and climate adaptation and other direct benefits, yeah. I agree. I don't think that's so much of a question, it's more of a statement. But yes, tree planting is hopefully the way in which we can provide access to markets to incentivize tree planting and conservation of and regeneration of forests and ecosystems, which leads to other direct benefits, so climate mitigation and adaptation, which is the fundamental premise under which we're operating. And then there's a question also from Danny. You've been very busy here, I can see. How can we promote a narrative of 4 Ps, public, private, people, and partnerships for tree planting or agroforestry or invest in nature? I mean, that's exactly what we're trying to do for Output 4. This is very much a partnership between the forest communities, the public sector, but also the private sector. So we're trying to provide this bridge so that we can enable forest communities to develop private sector entities and engage with other private sector entities, which will give them access to markets, access to additional revenue streams so that they can commercialize and sort of increase the chances of long-term sustainability for their enterprises. I think that is all the questions, and I apologize if I have answered anybody else's questions, but if anybody else has any questions, please do let me know. Thank you.
Maybe I would like to follow up on, because I like to connect the 2 dots. So Long Ratnakoma also mentioned some private interest in private sector aspects in Cambodia. And there was at the same time the question on the partnerships. So I thought maybe it's a good to establish this kind of linkage. So it seems, Ratnakoma, correct me if I'm mistaken, there is really a keen interest in Cambodia also to establish this kind of public-private partnerships and looking at how to incentivize sustainable forest management. Thanks. I know Ratnakoma or George, if you want to come in on that.
Sorry, Matthew, can you increase can you repeat the question one more time? I didn't catch it all.
Okay, sorry, I tried to speak directly in the microphone, sorry. So there was the question, Ratnakoma also mentioned the potential interest in Cambodia to work towards the public-private partnership, at least to see private investments, this kind of investment into perhaps production forests. So I don't know, Koma, if you want to specify specifically what would be potential avenues or areas that you would like us to look at. And George, you might perhaps connect outcome 4 to that aspect. Thanks. Koma.
Okay, well, I'll jump in just to say that this is exactly what Output 4 is really pertaining to achieve. You know, we really want to link up the social forest communities to markets beyond the immediate scope, so beyond carbon markets, so we can beyond selling purely for their own their own maintenance. And in doing so, once you have established a linkage with commercial markets, then you can also begin to talk to financiers. So you can talk to private financiers from, you know, who have been provided with the assurance of an offtake agreement and understanding that there are revenues coming in. This is really the sort of linkage and the scope that we're hoping to achieve for Output 4. I hope that's answered your question, but I'm very, very happy to follow up offline later if I haven't.
Thanks, George. I see another question from Chang Dani. So let me address this question, which is how much funds of this project are dedicated for tree planting in project participating countries? So we will have, just to highlight, we will have specific discussions per country. The main goal of the project is not to fund tree planting specifically, but it is to create the evidence. So where is the potential? How much, if we undertake certain tree planting activities, what would be the potential mitigation contribution. UNEP or George specifically might look at what is the financial picture if we look at this kind of tree planting models within a social forestry context, of course. And then, so that could provide an interesting prospect of investing in certain rehabilitation or forest enhancement activities. I hope that addresses the question. I will, before answering some of the other questions, perhaps in the interest of time, perhaps we can go to the next presentation. So we will have a presentation from Mr. Tubagus Aye Ramansha, apologies for my pronunciation, from Indonesia. The floor is yours, Indonesia.
Thank you, Mr. Matthew. I will give presentation, but first I'm sorry that I cannot turn on the video just for make sure that the presentation is well, because of the connection. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Tubagus Ajiramansyah. I'm Deputy Director of Community Forestry and Community Plantation Forest of Directorate General of Social Forestry and Environment Partnership. And first, I would like to say apologize because actually the person who will give this presentation is my director, Mr. Safda, but since he has another appointment meeting with my DG, so he pointed me to give or deliver the presentation. Next, please. Next, for beginning with the social forest in Indonesia, actually, social forestry is corrective action from the Indonesian government, because previously most of legal access of forest permit only given to corporate or private sector. Through social forestry, inequality in access, which is lead to poverty to community that live surrounding and within forest, is corrected. We believe that by giving the right to the community to access and manage the forest, it will lead to increase their welfare and sustainability of the forest. And to make sure that the policy is, the implementation of the social forestry is clearly good or well, then our government make several policy. First, government has issued the national decree. It is the first time where social forestry clearly stated in law to ensure fair access and sustainable forest management with the principle of ecological balance, social and well-being. This is a strong political support in social forestry. And here, from the omnibus law or job creation, from the decree is number 11 in 2020, and then we also make the policy about the government regulation number 23 in 2021 on forest administration, and the last one is ministerial decree number 9 in 20 and 21 on social forestry. Next. This in the implementation of the social forestry, now Indonesian government have 3 new paradigms on the social forestry. First is about the multi-sectoral collaboration, since we know that social forestry is not only about forest, but it's also about the people and the nation itself. And the next one is improving community welfare and sustainable forest. And the last one is internalization in regional development. Because previously we only think or make the policy related to social forestry is only on the forestry sector, but actually to manage or develop the forest is not only about the forest itself, but it's also about the community and also about the regional, the regional itself also. Next. This is the definition of the social forestry in Indonesia, where social forestry is more about the forest management system in a state forest or private forest or adat forest that managed by local community or adat community to increase the prosperity, environmental balance, and social cultural dynamic through same village forest, community forest, people forest, plantation partnership and adat forest. Here, Indonesia social forestry, we not only make the community as a labor or as a project, but we give them the permit to manage the forest by themselves and give full right from the planning, managing, and also harvesting the forest. But they have to maintain the function of the forest. Therefore, we will have we will sure that there will be no degraded forest because of their management. Next. Here the scheme of the social forestry Indonesia. We have 5 schemes. When it is called as high five because it's 5 scheme. First is village forest, forest managed by the village, and the second one is community forest, where forests are managed by the community. And then we have also the forest plantation forest. This is sustainable community forest plantation (HTR), and then we have the customary forest. Forests are the for the customary or community land, and the last one is the forestry partnership. This is where community manage the forest with the have the partner or partner with the private sector. Next one. Yeah. I think this is linked to the what Mr. Mario said previously, that now we on the era of the scaling up of the social forestry implementation. Here we can see that actually now the achievement of the social forestry Indonesia is reached 4.9 million hectare, and from the graph, this is clearly see that we can see that there's a big increase of the delivering the forest for the community from the 2016 until 2019. Here where the new policy is being implemented and well regulated. So and in the other side, I mean, from the community itself, now we have from the pyramid, we can see that the classification of social forestry enterprise group, we made 4 classification for the farmers group. It is the blue one for the first farmers group who just received their permit, until the platinum. This is the highest level of the forest farmer group. It is we can see that now we have 9,223 KUPS or enterprise group. We hope that by using this classification, we can have clear policy or strategy for each farmers group, because the different level which will lead to different way to make them manage the forest. Next. Next, just we can skip this slide. Yeah, this one. I think this is linked to the what will project do in the next step, because from this we can see that actually social forestry give contribution in adaptation and mitigation of climate change This is one of our community forestry in KT Haluang Kering, Lahat District, South Sumatra Province. Actually, this farmers group achieved their permit in 2017. Here, there was an increase of land cover from 2014 until 2020. From secondary forest become primary forest. This is just one of the example, and actually, if from the explanation of the UN REDD project, the next, I think it will be a good opportunity if the project can help us to maybe in a simple way, you can say that to calculate how big the contribution of the social forestry in the climate change, and it is and also about the national determined contribution, I mean, to the NDC. Next one. Yeah, to implement this policy in our country, actually, we have a new policy also about we have the cross-sectoral collaboration. This is using the National Task Force on Social Forestry. In here, we have multi-sectoral and multi background, and also multi ministry, not only from the forestry, but also from the other ministry in Indonesia, which have a close relation with the forest. And then now we are in the step of making the presidential regulation to operate the national strategy, where in here is we integrated the planning on social forestry, and the focus of the presidential regulation is on the focus on the distribution of legal access and assistance, and also business development. Next. Yeah, one of the example of the cross-sector collaboration is collaborative action on social forestry through foreign grant. Here specifically in our Directorate General, we have 6 projects on social forestry. It is Forest Program 2, Forest Program 3, Forest Program 5, Forest Investment Program 1, Forest Investment Program 2, and Global Environment Fund and 6. Here cover almost operate in 15 province in the 29 district, and for the 39 forest management unit, and cover 512 village around the country. Because we have, maybe not only in Indonesia, I think also in the other country, fund to implement the social forestry, because it's not because our government also have other priority, so we only have low budget to implement the social forestry. Therefore, we use the foreign grant from the project to spread up and also to speed up the implementation of social forestry in Indonesia. Next. Yeah, here one of the example about the regional development. I mean the social forestry in the regional development. As the government issued national decree where all sector has to collaborate to strengthen social forestry. Under presidential decree, one of the strategy is we call is integrated area development, or EAD. Here we develop social forestry integrated area with multi-stakeholders process to improve economic development in the region. We set a target 1 IED per province. The the concept is we expand the social forestry permit, and then we make the integrated business area based on the local product, and then we hope that this development will give impact or benefit not only for the forest or only for the community, but also for the regional level area. Next. Actually, now we already put the social forestry in the voluntary plan. Here, Indonesia voluntary in the Indonesian voluntary strategy from 72.2 million hectare total area of voluntary. Social forestry will be contribute around 4.05 million hectare. It's around 6% of the target of the voluntary. We hope that by this contribution will also scale up the point of the social forestry in Indonesia. Next. I guess it is in line with one of the objective of the UN REDD project. Here, actually to monitoring the permit that already given by the government, we use technology such as information system. Here integrate to the national registry system of social forestry. Here we call as the GOCUPS. Using this, we can monitor the progress of the activity of the community, and then the area and field, how many the field assistant, what is the product, and how much the product, and also biophysical condition. But in this information system, we haven't make or related about the climate change. I mean, how many carbon that absorbed from the social forestry and etc. I hope from the project also it will also make enrich this information system, our information system. So not only about the how large the area that already give, or how or about the economic information, but also about the ecological information that give from the social forestry. Next. This is the three challenge in social forestry development and implementation in Indonesia. First is about the huge cover area, because actually our government, our president already put us a target that we have to deliver around 12.7 million hectare, but now we only reach 5 million hectare, so we still have around 7 million hectare to deliver to the community. That is a big challenge for our government. The other one is the economic development, because we cannot only think about the how large the area already given by the to the community, but also what about the economic impact or benefit to the community, and also for the region and for the country. And the last one is the challenge about the governance, because like I've said before, the social forestry is not only about the forest or only about the community that live within the forest, but social forestry is more or bigger or wider than that. It is about it's also about the economic growth in the regional and also for the country. And we also here social forestry we put as the one of the strategy to increase the community or people welfare. Therefore, cross-sectoral collaboration is a must that we cannot avoid that. Next one. This is the recommendation and future plans nationally and regionally to strengthen social forestry development. First is to encourage the cross-sectoral integration in social forestry, since social forestry has multi-purpose, and that the other is capacity building, especially for the field assistant, because we believe that it is hard to community to manage the forest by themselves, but they need to be assist to manage the forest, and therefore we need to add the field assistant, and also not only the number of the field assistant, but also the quality of the field assistant, so they can assist the community and give technical assistance about how to manage the forest sustainably. And the third one is the product development. We use the EAD to develop product and enlarge market, and also about the digitalize the social forestry product, and then the access market and product certification, and the last one is about the branding. And the last one is about the encourage database to monitor and to improve the quality of social forestry implementation. Next slide. I guess this is the last slide from me. This is about the future plan for partnership. Here we have three purpose of the partnership. First is to support the effort in order to accelerate the business development of social forestry forest group in terms of strengthening resource, funding, and business capacity building. The second is to support contribution of social forestry in achieving Indonesian net foreseen through agroforestry, restoration, and community-based forest and land rehabilitation. And the last one is to support Indonesia social forestry program in the ASEAN country through ASEAN Working Group on Social Forestry, where Indonesia is the host of the AWGSF secretariat and the lead country in the working group. Next. Yeah, thank you very much. I'm looking forward for the discussion. I hope from this forum we can have we can make how to collaborate to make sure that the implementation of social forestry in Indonesia especially, and also in the other world globally, will give a high impact to the climate change, also to the NDC. Thank you. I give back to you, Mr. Matthew.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and certainly when we talk about climate change, we have to do it together. So with these final remarks, I completely agree, and I hope that we have very fruitful exchanges also between countries, member states in the process. I saw a few questions in the chat that maybe we can address. There was a question on the 5 schemes that are mentioned. What is the difference in practice between village forestry and social forestry? And there was another question regarding, again, the high 5 social forestry scheme. Is each of the forest type independent, or can one area be both? Can be both HDR and HA? So but I think the broader question is, can one area be both 2 two social forestry models under the high five. And the question, a related question, and if they are together, are they then managed in different way because of this dual function? Thank you.
Okay, I will answer the question from Mr. Hassan. Regarding the high five, actually in one area can only be one scheme. So there will no one area have two scheme, like for the village forest and also the community forest, because that is our policy, our government, that one area only can be receive one permit, one kind of permit or scheme. And then what is the difference between the village forest and the community forest? Here the village forest is the forest area are managed by the village, so the permit is given to the village, But for the community forest, or in here in Indonesia we call it HKM, hutan kemasyarakatan. Here the forest, the permit of the forest is given to the community, I mean to the farmers group. Therefore, that's the difference. So I think I hope it's clear enough. And then the last one is, can a secondary forest can be converted or recognized as a primary forest? Just I guess this is this is for the slide, the impact. Now, from my presentation next, here only about the, here we see that the secondary forest, I mean the change of the forest cover, only for the forest cover, not detail of until the become the primary forest. But here the condition at in the 2014, the secondary forest is already good. I mean, therefore in the 2020 it become the primary forest. But I guess we still have to discuss about the level of the primary forest or secondary forest, the term itself, because maybe the other country or have a different different level of classification when the forest called as the primary forest or the secondary forest. Thank you.
Sorry, I apologize. I think we got another presentation that we added into the slideshow. I see there was a good discussion in the chat. So the question from Katrina Borromeo is to basically Cambodia and Laos, is there any publicly available database on social forestry initiative in your countries, such as what was just presented by Indonesia, the Go Cups? So there were responses, and Laos so far does not have such a database, and for Cambodia also does not have publicly available database, but will develop a community forest database for public sharing. Then my question here would be, actually, has there been an exchange in terms of how specific the Indonesia Go Cups system, what the infrastructure entails, what is it open source? Is it something that where Laos and Cambodia can also learn from? So maybe that's an open question through the floor. Thank you.
Can I have a share screen? I want to show about the Go Cups, just to give what is slide description, or so all of you can see about what is Go Cups itself.
Okay. It's in the existing presentation or a separate?
No, I will open the browser because it is the web browser application.
Yep, please go ahead.
Can you see the my share screen?
Yes.
This is our application. This is the GoCoops. Here the map of Indonesia. We can see that from the right side, that's the classification of the forest community enterprise. Biru is called we call as blue, perak, emas, and platinum. Here we already put the geotagging system, so we can know that if we zoom it, and this is a web-based application, so everyone, and it is open. I mean, everyone can see about the implementation. I mean, about the implementation of the software Indonesia from here. And it's clickable. For example, when I click this one, and there will be an information about the farmer enterprise, how about the level, and also if we want to see the detail in the green one here, we can see about the when the permit is being given and how large the area, and etc. That's the simple site about the GoCoops that we have. But like I've said before, here we haven't put information about the carbon. It will be a good if the project also can help us how to monitoring the absorption of the carbon from the community forestry. So it will give clear or maybe instant information about how the impact of the social forestry to the climate change. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think I see some more questions, but perhaps we can come back to the questions after the next presentations. Just to answer very quickly on this prospect, I think it fits very well to the initiative, and under the initiative we could discuss how we can contribute to Indonesia in terms of exactly what you're talking about in terms of looking at the mitigation, potential mitigation, or the current mitigation contribution, as well as the monitoring of social forestry interventions. Thank you very much for this comprehensive presentation. In the interest of time, I think we are already a bit late, but can I give the floor to Laos for that intervention? Mr. Ponapan Luanggapai. I hope I pronounced it well. The floor is yours.
So distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. So my name is Ponapan. I'm going to present on behalf of delegates from Laos. So I try my best to respond to your question or comment, and to explain and in order to share village forestry in Lao PDR. Okay, next one. So this is the content I'm going to present. The first one is village forestry program, and the second one is forestry law and village forest management plannings guidelines, and also related guidelines. And the third one is role of village forestry in sustainable forest management, and fourth is challenges, opportunities on village forestry implementation. And the last is how village forestry or social forestry in effective in naturally systemized contributions. Okay, next. So this is the village first program. So like the policies is something is from the law and in order that the first one to support the government, the policy on first cover increase. That means the firstly we can know how much the area that the firstly can contribute first area, the hectare, I mean first cover. So the improvements of the mouth and structure mean that in 2012, DOF has established of village forest and NTFP management division is at that time. So now we have new name. Just it is the NTFP is moved to the new is about the quota and NTFP management moved to the new division. So we call the new name is Village Forest Management Division. And for the NTFPs, promoting plantation or some related, because two divisions we work together. So our target that we achieve the village forest management so far until now we have completed is the 1,385 villages until now. So you can see on the map that it's more than 8,000 villages located in the T forest categories. So we have to develop by continuous to develop the management plan. Our target is the 1,500 every year for the next 5 years until 2025. So next slide. So this is the forestry law and village forest management plan guidelines. So according to the forestry law article 39 is about village forest management plan. That means village forest management plan is managed of the forest and forest land within the management area of the village, which is the operation both between outside and inside and forest area. So in outside protection, conservation, protection, and also that we also have the guideline, technical guidelines that, as you may know, is the common approach 5 steps. So beside this, we also have monitoring and collaboration, coordination, and village forest management activity and correction with NGO, non-NGO, and relevant section that we also work with the rise of Ministry of Monterey and Commerce Industry. So next slide. So this is, as I mentioned for the previous slide, Revised Forestry Law is in 2019. So from the first law, we have the main article, as I said, is the article 39. It's about village forest management planning. In the last paragraph is to mention about the technical guideline. We will also have the instruction of the ministry about the implementation of village forestry management, and we will going to have like this. But normally we have the common approach and technical guidelines. So you can see the 5 steps of forest management plan. And the first step is the land use planning or review of land use planning. And a second step is to identify and demarcate forest category in village land area. And number 3 is to develop forest management plan. And it continues the step. And also step 4 is the implementation of forest management plan. As the forest management plan is the prepared by villager is support from Darfur district agricultural forestry. And number 5, step 5 is the monitoring and evaluation, including the patrolling and everything that's the village forest units is continuous implementation and by support from district. So next slide. So the main ethical mentioned on forestry law is the ethical 61. It's about the utilization of forest, timber, and NTFP classification into 4 categories as follows. The one is utilization of forest, timber, NTFP for public benefits. That means we have 3 classifications, 4 categories. Sorry. So the first one is for public benefits. The second one for household use, and the third is customary forest is of timber and NTFP, and the fourth one is for business purpose. And also the Article 77 is about the forest land utilization in terms of the forestry law in Lao PDR is classified into 3 categories. So the first one is utilization of public benefits. Second is the utilization of household benefit, and the third is business purpose. It's linked between two ethical. So next, this is the rise of forest and forest land. It's Article 126, and this article is about the individual household unitized organization have use factors rights for forest and forest lands, which they have developed in the forest and forest land area. Provide them by state. I mean that states given the right to the community, to the village. This just rise of allows conduct of certain activities, such as the selling timber and TFP. We have apprentice, and we recommend you recognize that villager the apprentice, and also rehabilitated and it generates income from ecotourism from the trade first carbon. The tree and TFP plantation registration certificate can be used as the collateral or for the acquisition of share in the other business. So the next slide. So by following the common 4-5 step, we have the role of village forestry in the sustainable forest management divided into 3 parts. So the part 1 is overview, background, and situation of land and forest resource, and also program and opportunities. So this is the 3 part is the showings on the book of management plan, the village forest management plan. So the second Second part is the village managed of forest and forest land, and also village participation in state forest management. For example, where the village located in the forest in the state forest area. So we have to do that's the recognize. So the third one is the implementation of the forest activities. As I mentioned, for the step 5, the step 5 of common effort is linked together. It's also to monitoring and evaluation, including patrolling and reporting, is the implemented by village authority, village forestry units, and support from district and other project is active in the target area. So next slide. Challenge opportunity on village forestry implementation. The first one is the improve of the policy incentive for communities or participatory sustainable forest management in on-fire of forest. For example, in the production, protection, conservation forest, also the analysis area. And the second one, to develop of the modalities of providing financial incentive, including the distribution of benefits to the community, to the village. And that's in case in varieties of PSFM activities. For example, in enhancement of forest carbon stock, regeneration of the decreased forest, and etc. So number 2 is integration of the PSFM activity into village dry development plan and program as the 3 pillars development policy is the decentralization of the government policy. The first one is the cross-sector and country collaboration to address drivers of village forest management plan. So next slide. Can I have next slide? So this is the potential synergies with other initiatives. So now we have the project support from MRAG, from STC on recognition of customary land tenure in Cambodia province. We also incorporate with the relevant department within MAF and also Monterey Department of Land, and the LAM Department of Land, Agricultural Land Management at Ministry of Culture and Forestry. So the second is the KW project, Village Forest Management project in 3 provinces in Luang Prabang. In 2 provinces in Luang Prabang, Siam, and also the World Bank's LLL project is the landscape of the 3 category of the forest. That is the just start now this year. So also the GSF IGFL project in Luang Prabang, Sambuli, and Hua Pan. So GFL is disseminated, came from the Khai Pas, former Khai Pas. It's the starts in Hua Pan. So it's also the RECOFTC on village forestry in Sayamuli and Bokal. So now on project that it can mostly contribute the village forestry in Lao, and to promote the village forestry management in Lao. So this is I think the last slide of my presentation. So Thank you for your high attention.
Thank you, indeed. I see a few questions. There was I think Ron, you already answered question in terms of different countries, different definitions. So what means village forest in one country does not mean that it's the same in another country. There is another question specifically on Lao PDR. What, let me read it from Kiev. What is the meaning of village forestry in Lao PDR? So specifically asking of what you understand as village forestry in Laos. Maybe you could clarify it. Thank you.
So let me share the experience in terms of forestry law. So the forestry is the, since the villager and village or communities, they manage the forest, inside or outside forest categories. So normally we have general meanings, general and specific meanings of the village forestry. So just we follow the policy, and also the important is the forestry law. So this is similar to community forest and social forest in other countries.
Clarification. Yeah. I see that David Gans also shared a link to the knowledge tree, which clarifies some what is social forestry. So there is some the basic explanation or context. There was another question specifically on Lao PDR. I think we can address this as a last question, and we go to the next presentation from RECOFTC. For Lao PDR, what are the main challenges, or what are the main challenges are faced in social forestry management? Are issues like potential leakage or displacement being discussed and understood between different districts or villages? So meaning, if one village is managing the forest very well, does that have any impact on other villages in terms of displacement of, for instance, deforestation or more demand for the product from forest in another area?
So the main challenges, so as you may know, is the forestry in Laos is happened for many years, but the organization just set up is in 2012. So the main what we faced is I also mentioned about the database. So we need more information about the village forestry. For example, the area and the village profile is more focused on village forestry. And also one thing that's is about the cross-sector, the cooperation. It's not only the agriculture and forestry sector to do the village forestry, but other sector also involved in also to promote, for example, to promote the NTFP that can be developed to the product, so, and also to meet the market. Yeah, very important that the income of the villager is really important. It's not only forest management, but we need also the livelihood development beside of the village forest management. I think I can respond the question.
I see that Dr. Pakon has also raised his hand and maybe would like a short intervention. Please go ahead.
Hello. I'm traveling to the south for the wildlife and aquatic life law improvement. So we are about to submit to National Assembly in few months, in next few months. So really tight schedule nowadays. Sorry for that, not to be in Vientiane and really good connection with internet. So it's linked to the question. I would like to explain like this. Village forestry is context of Lao PDRs. Yeah, we consider that is a village boundary, village territories. You know, lowest organization we have province, district, and village. So villages by law, forestry law, by local administration law. So they have full power to manage the forest within the administrative boundary. That is village forestry. Is where it's different from community forestry. Yeah, in other country. That's why in Asia, in Asian member state, we recognize like this, like the village forestry is Lao PDR. So it's already mentioned in the law. That is, they consider, they manage, they utilize, they use and take leadership to manage forest resources within the village boundary. That is already the law. It's like it's village forestry. The second question is about linkage. Linkage village and district. It's not always happened. At the village level, they have really clear boundary demarcation, and through village forestry, we have land use, plan at village level. So different village, they will have different land use type, and they have right to do it within the village boundary. That's all. So if they enter to another village for slash and burn for encroachment, it will be against the local administration law. So it not usually happen. Yeah, except that they have let's say the traditional recognition of the land use in a long time ago, before the village boundary demarcation. So they have for the long time use and recognize each other. That is like that. So this is my intervention. I hope it's clear. Thank you.
Thank you. That's much appreciated. Thank you. With that, perhaps we can go to the next slide, which is by Ron from RECOFTC. Ron, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Matthew, and thanks a lot, REDD, FAO, UNEP, and ASEAN Secretariat to allow us to be partner of this project. Really, I appreciate that. As many of you already mentioned, that RECOFTC has been engaging, working, supporting social forestry for ASEAN member states over the last decade, and we are so proud to be partner of the ASEAN Secretariat, UNRED, FAO, SDC, to be getting recognized with that. Matthew, can I get the screen for the next? I'm not so sure who managed the screen. Can you go to the next? Okay, we're very brief about RECOFTC, and I'm glad that I see old friends and colleagues joining us, representative from Lao PDR, Cambodia, Indonesia. It's very nice to see you all here. Probably just very brief for those who do not really know about RECOFTC. We have been exist for over the last 3 decades, and we have working more or less in the priorities countries like Nepal, Myanmar, Thailand, Indonesia, Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam. even though we have our offices in these 7 countries, but we still have some work in Central Asia, South Asia, Eastern Africa, South Africa, in many extent. So for the 3 countries that under this project, Laos, we have our office next to Dr. Opogon. Yeah, and Cambodia, we have office. We have 2 offices. One is in FA next to Long Ratanakumar. And also Indonesia, we still have office in CFET in Bogor. Yeah, but to discuss actually would be good if we can meet. I'm planning to go to Indonesia next week. Next, please. Okay, just to highlight our position that we believe in the futures where people, indigenous people, local people live equitably and sustainably in and besides healthy, resilient forests. So you see our position claim here that address the issues on climate change mitigation, adaptation in our mission. Next, please. I just want to touch a little bit on the approach. We touched on the, okay, go next. Next. Yeah, we work on the landscape collaboration under the climate, changing climate. We work on forest governance, institution, conflict transformation. We work on the private sector engagement, enterprise communities. We also support and promote the social inclusion, gender equity, and public action to ensure sustainable forest management in the region. Next, please. Well, we take long-term and landscape-based approach. We like to promote the inclusive approach to helping local communities, marginal people secure their land and resource right, to stop deforestation and build alternative livelihood and achieve gender equities. So we try to work with many stakeholders to promote the sustainable forest management. Next, please. Well, I don't want to go into detail, but our position is about at the middle. We're being stakeholder, government agency, donors, research institute, practitioners, civil society, private sector, academic institutes together to massage the concept of social forestry in the ASEAN country. We recognize that everyone has played different roles to support. So that's why we try to bring the asset or the strength of these multiple stakeholders into the big picture. Next, please. Well, these are the list of ideas that we have been doing that already mentioned by Ponpan, Upagon, or Long Ratanakumar, or our colleagues, Pak Tubagas in Indonesia. But these are the things that we already have done cover in ASEAN countries. Next, I go very brief, so that's why we can catch up the time a little bit. Under this project, we try to help and support in terms of doing the assessment, analysis of social forestry in Cambodia, Laos, Indonesia. At some point, we have some basic data in hand. It doesn't matter how we can validate with the state member representative who are representing here. We provide capacity building support in different topics, including forest monitoring, enterprise development, or even climate change mitigation, private sector engagement. We support integration on the social forestry action, meeting with the NDC target and implementing the plan. We support responsible private investment that George mentioned in the output 4, working closely with NTFPEP. I'm sure that will cover part of it. So this is our role, and we'd like to take immediate step when we get the official kind of a partnership agreement with FAO and UNEP, I hope very soon. Okay, so we are very keen to take the step on the ground and put our feet dirty in these 3 countries at the regional level. So with that, I'd like to say thank you again to UN REDD to allow us to be our strategic partner, and we go shoulder by shoulder together with you. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Ron. Are there any questions from the floor regarding Ricof's presentation? If not, just noting that RECOFT have shared several links to documentation regarding the questions that were asked earlier in the chat. Okay, in the interest of time, could I ask Mr. Dessel, please, to present on the indigenous people and local community perspectives? The floor is yours.
Thanks, Matthew. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you to UNEP, UNRED, FAO, SDC for inviting the CSO Forum on Social Forestry in ASEAN to present our perspectives or our insights on the newly launched project. This is the perspectives on behalf of the Civil Society Organizations Forum on Social Forestry in ASEAN. We would like to share some of the highlights of what we do and some challenges also that we've encountered based on the research that has been done by the CSO Forum back in 2018, and also to share some opportunities and low-hanging fruits that we hope we could continue collaborating on. So next slide, please. Just to quickly introduce NTF-PEP as the lead convener of the CSO Forum in the past 12 years. So we are founded in 1988 as an association of 25 members and a collaborative network of over 100 partner NGOs and community-based organizations that provide enabling support to indigenous peoples and local communities. We want to elevate community-based forest conservation, culture and indigenous knowledge, systems and practices, and gender equality and women's rights. Next slide, please. Going straight to the CSO Forum. So we are established back in 2011 as an NGO space, but formally established in 2012 and participated in by over 40 civil society organizations composed of non-government organizations and membership organizations of local forest communities, IPLCs, family farmers, and these organizations have common interest to implement different activities as mentioned there in the slide, particularly on forest tenure and access rights, traditional and indigenous knowledge systems, natural resources, even REDD+, to name a few. Next slide, please. So we utilize many strategies as also what as like RECOF. The network also do evidence-based communication, research and experience sharing, capacity building, evidence-based lobby and advocacy, and other types of strategies also like mobilizing resources, networking. We also have been working closely with some of our distinguished participants here and speakers. And use of now with the COVID, we have been very much using the internet to continue the discussion and the platform's collaboration and communication. Next slide, please. So just to show you a picture, some photos of what the CSO Forum has been doing over the years. So from 2011 up to now, I think the photos there are until 2020, but we are very much continuing as a loose network until this year, and continuing on with carrying our theory of change up to 2025. So the CSO Forum envisions empowered and resilient indigenous and local communities and farmers in forested landscape in ASEAN with secured equal rights and well-being through an institutionalized CSO platform working towards recognition and promotion of indigenous knowledge and local wisdom, tenure and access rights, community economy and livelihood, international and regional standards and safeguards, and inclusive governance mechanisms. Next slide, please. As mentioned earlier, based on the 2018 research and findings of the members of the Civil Society Organizations Forum, we have identified some challenges in implementing social forestry targets in the region, but we categorize it into 4 thematic areas where the CSO Forum works on. First, on community economy and livelihood, there was a finding that some community forestry enterprises are still operating in isolation. There's still lack of market linkages and very tedious and costly permitting processes for CFEs. Under the governance mechanisms, there's still limited capacity of both CSOs, IPLCs, and government to effectively collaborate and engage in developing effective policies on social forestry. Next slide, please. In terms of international and regional standards and safeguards, findings also shown that there's still limited guidance of policymakers in the effective implementation and use of free, prior, and informed consent and other grievance mechanisms in the region. There's still lack of capacity and awareness by local communities on some of the international and regional mechanisms. In terms of tenure rights, ownership rights are still conditional and restricted in a number of cases, and there are overlapping mandates between customary territories and other management areas such as forest reserve, parks, and forest concession. Next slide, please. So going straight to the opportunities, one of the opportunities that we wanted to present also here is the CSO Forum has developed a theory of change, and it starts from 2020 up to 2025 with still the 4 domains of change where the CSO Forum are working on: the community economy and livelihood, tenure and access rights, international and regional standards and safeguards, and governance mechanism. These 4 domains of change. Next slide, please. It's quite small, but we can share we can share in the chat the detailed content of the theory of change. But basically, the CSO Forum members have mapped out several outcomes and inputs, activities, and interventions based on the findings of the status of social forestry and in the engagement of civil society organizations in the region, and they have come up with key activities, inputs, and interventions that the CSO Forum would like to implement in the next 5 years. Next slide, please. And specifically for some potential synergies that we would like to put forward with the UN REDD initiative, we feel that there are relevant targets under the CSO Forum theory of change that we would like to engage with this UN REDD project, particularly first on continuing lobby and advocacy work on customary tenure recognition in ASEAN. This is a work that we are currently doing with the Mekong Regional Land Governance Project and Green Livelihood Alliance, with RECOF also as part of the Regional Alliance on Customary Tenure Network. Another one is in developing a guidebook and some tools on ethic implementation to provide support in resource protection and grievance mechanisms for indigenous people and local communities and environmental defenders. Continue the knowledge exchanges and strengthening partnerships and capacity building and policy dialogues on important themes that are mentioned also in this launch, like NDCs, ecosystem-based adaptation, and nature-based solution, and the link of these important themes to the current work of the CSO Forum, particularly on tenure rights and governance mechanisms. Next slide, please. We also see potential synergy in terms of capacity building and promotion through sustained appropriate capacity building program and assistance in meeting standards, value addition, regional and national marketing and branding for sustainable climate adaptive community forests, micro, small, and medium enterprises or MSMEs, and to continue build trust, transparency, and good relationship between community and government, and recognize, promote the indigenous and traditional knowledge in forest management, particularly the important role of women and youth in forest governance. So I think that would be my last slide for this afternoon. So thank you very much for the time. You may visit our social media and website for more information about NTFPP. Thank you, Matthew, and to the organizers.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and as you mentioned, there was one slide which was quite small, so perhaps good to share the link to the documents in the chat. Conscious of the time, we are running quite late. I would like to open the floor for the question and answers. So if you have questions, please do raise your hand or type your question in the chat box, and we try to answer those questions. At the same time, that's perhaps there are questions that have been tapped. I would like to thank again all the presenters of this panel session. I mean, it was very insightful to see the different perspectives. This is the different context, different countries, as well as from RECOFT and from the CSO network, their areas of expertise and support. Thank you for sharing the documents. If there are no questions, perhaps we can give the floor to Diane, the ASEAN Secretariat. Check. Diane, are you available?
Matthew, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Before proceed to closing, I think we propose to have group picture. Just I think we need 1 or 2 minutes for taking virtual group photo session, if it is okay.
Okay, on my side, I look at technical possibilities.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
I think Mitawi will lead for the virtual photo sessions and invite all participants to open their video.
Yes, please. Everyone ready? 1, 2, 3. Okay, another one. 1, 2, 3. May I have one more, please? Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I just don't want to hold a little bit more because we have running the time, but I see that we have excitement of this program. So I just would like to briefly note some our discussion on the future step. So I will highlight two important points of this launching event. We have heard from 3 representatives of Cambodia, Indonesia, and Lao PDR as the country pilot project, and we do hope that we could support the implementation at the national level. First, about the next step, toward its implementation, I noted that UN REDD partners will discuss and deliberate detailed work plan and arrangement with pilot countries through country consultation meeting with Cambodia, Indonesia, and Lao PDR. And for this regional component, ASEAN Secretariat is currently working with the FAO and implementing agency of the, we expect that the support from the National Technology, Nanyang Technology University from Singapore to work on operationalization of the project. And the second, I would like to pick up keyword connecting on the importance of this UN REDD program that actually in line with ASEAN coherence, ASEAN connectivity, people to people. First, connecting the past, current, and future direction of ASEAN-Swiss partnership. The second is connecting social forestry, climate change mitigation, and its contribution to the NDCs. The third, connecting national agenda with regional and international priorities. And last but not least, connecting different partners with regional agenda and future climate change dialogue. With that, let us connecting the initiative of different stakeholders to enhance social forestry development in ASEAN as entry point and climate change mitigation effort in forestry sectors. Let's encourage ourselves to strengthen our network and enhancing partnership. And thank you again for your participation and sharing excitement during this launching event. Thank you very much and good afternoon.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.